All right, I'm picking back up on page 117. As the train pulled out, Violet looked back. She could see the hatchet-faced woman sitting beside her basket, an angular gray figure growing smaller in the distance, until the train rounded a curve and she disappeared. Violet wondered what it would be like to be waiting for your son to come home from France in a box. She thought about the woman giving birth to her son. Violet's mother had told her that babies were brought by a stork, but Flossie had given Violet a different explanation that sounded only slightly less unlikely. And then changing his diapers and teaching him table manners, and sending him off to school and making beef tea for him when he was sick, and then being told by the government that she had to send him off to France so that he could come home in a box. The more Violet thought about it, the angrier she got. Suddenly, Violet understood why all these women were riding to Nashville on a train. It was so that women would never again have to sit by in silence while men made decisions they didn't like. Whether it was father deciding that Chloe couldn't go to college, or the government deciding that people's sons had to go fight in France, whether they wanted to or not. The train pulled into a small station, a flag stop. The little covered platform was a jumble of trunks, porters, and valises. Men and women in stiff-looking best clothes milled about, waiting for the train doors to open. Another newsboy who looked about 8 years old was hawking papers, screaming at the top of his lungs, "Riots! Riots in Ireland!" Then, when that didn't attract any customers, "Tigers beat the Yankees!" Miss Dexter stood up and waved out the open window. "Paper," she called. The boy came over and handed a paper through the window. Violet could smell the fresh ink. Miss Dexter dropped 3 pennies into his outstretched hand. The train doors had opened, and a few people went down the steps onto the wooden platform. Violet stared. If she hadn't known better, she would have sworn one of the people who got off the train was Mr. Martin. She looked again. It was Mr. Martin. But how was that possible? Mr. Martin had jumped off a completely different train the night before. She hardly had time to wonder before she noticed someone following Mr. Martin. Or that's what it looked like anyway. It wasn't one of the agents from last night, but the man wore a starched collar. Of course, most men did. And he walked with a speed and sense of purpose that seemed out of place on a railroad platform. Violet sprang to her feet. She started up the aisle toward the exit. Maybe there was time before the train left to warn Mr. Martin that he was being followed. She was in the vestibule when the train started moving. She pushed at the exit door, but it wouldn't open. She gave it a hard push, and it came open, just as a hand grabbed Violet from behind. "Let me go!" She hit out at whoever was holding her. On the platform, she saw a small colored girl running toward Mr. Martin. She could see that it was Myrtle. The train was already picking up. She couldn't see if it was Myrtle. The train was already picking up speed, and the station was soon out of sight. The conductor let go of her. "I don't know what you're playing at, Missy," he said disagreeably, "but you're a Nashville passenger, and to Nashville you're going." Violet hadn't wanted to get off, only to make sure Mr. Martin knew he was being followed. But it was no business of the conductor's. "I can get off the train if I want to," she said angrily. "Why would you want to?" the conductor said. "You're paid through to Nashville." He opened the door to the suffragist car. "Now get back to your seat, miss." Okay, I'm going to stop there, and I'll come back in a bit.